You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 369 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. And I am not joined by my usual co-host. My cousin Pat will be joining us on the second half of this podcast. He's on assignment, but will be here before the end of the show. And we will do our annual predictions. This is our prediction episode, season preview. Even though a couple of regular season games have been played, it's the weird thing where they go back and do some more spring training, and then we actually start the regular season. And someone who just got back from spring training coming on the podcast to spend time with us on the first half of the podcast, and then will provide his predictions, which we'll read on the second half of the podcast. You know him from his fine work at Cubs Insider and, of course, his many appearances here on this podcast. Evan Altman, thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's a pretty nice number for the episode. That's cool.
That's right.
It's all multiples, right? So that's cool. They're all multiples of 3. I enjoy that. And then I feel kind of bad because I flew out to Phoenix last Friday, and I did not go to that game, but the Cubs lost on Friday. And then I went to the games on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, all of which the Cubs lost. And then while I was at home, they finally won. So I don't know. Maybe that just means I can't go to any more games or think about them or be in the general vicinity of them while they're playing. So we'll see how that pans out this year.
While you didn't get to see a victory, were you able to see anything of note that was things you want to report back on from your trip? Stuff you saw out on the back lots as well.
Yeah, it was nice. I did get to see Owen Casey take some batting practice out there. You know, he's been out of action pretty much the entire spring. Had a groin injury, and that followed. And this is what I love about when it's the minor league guys, especially if they're not on the 40-man roster, but just in particular if they're not up with the active roster. Like, we don't hear about anything. It's like, they shut Owen Casey down with a strained groin, and by the way, he had off-season core muscle surgery. It's like, what?
What?
Huh? I'm sorry. What? But of course, it was similar with Dansby Swanson. We found out about that well after it happened. Nico Warner's forearm surgery. We found out later, but with Casey, it was like he had already been back in camp, and things had started up. So, but that was good to see. Did get to see a little bit of Horner, obviously him playing, which I got to witness in person, which most people did not, because the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday games were not broadcast on Marquee. Which I don't know if your listeners are aware, that's a regional sports network that the Cubs own.
It's unfathomable that
and
they don't.
All home games. These are all home games. That's
home games.
I thought that was the point, and I get, like, I don't know, maybe they had to ship their stuff back and wanted to give everybody, like, everybody needs a break, but you can certainly find some way to do it. How are you not broadcasting home games? And so we were sharing clips and videos and stuff like that of the games on Saturday and Sunday, put them out there, and probably would have, or actually mostly Sunday, because on Monday we weren't even thinking about it. Like, you take it for granted when you're going to the game in particular. But I was looking at it, so I write up the lineup post, and I was out there with John Felice, who co-owns Cubs Insider with me, and I was like, "Is today's game not on Marquee?" He said, "Surely it is." I was like, "I'm looking at MLB.com right now. I'm looking at the Cubs lineup on the app and with the game day preview, and it does not list any TV stations." I was like, "Surely this can't be right." But that was the case, all like 3 games in a row. And that so I discovered that, which everybody else did, I guess. But yeah, overall, it felt like, I don't know, it was and maybe it's because it's at the end, but it was kind of a more subdued vibe, I think, that I'm used to. The Club 400 tent wasn't, usually that's like a great tailgate scene, and it was up the one day, I think. But I think, again, you get to a certain point where you can just tell, and especially with the Tokyo series having taken place already. And so, these are all games that matter even less than usual. And there was this kind of, it's like, and my kids are now on spring break, but it's like when you were in school and you're playing out the string on those last few days before a break comes up. That's what it felt like more than usual. And I typically go about the same time, right when March Madness is starting up. And so it's similar, but this just, everybody kind of had a vibe like, all right, it's cool, we're here, but like, feels like this thing is played at this point. Like, let's move along, So that was about it. It was a little disappointing.
Yeah, you mentioned the Tokyo series. Speaking of disappointing, I loved the presentation. I love Japanese baseball is obviously extremely important as a feeder system now to MLB, and it's great how it's part of the culture there. The Tokyo Dome. I watch a lot of professional wrestling that takes place at the Tokyo Dome, so I like to see baseball there as well. I got excited. I got up early, like a lot of Cubs fans did. Got the 5 a.m. start, was going to watch that first game. And the offense just immediately took me back where I felt like it was right where we left off from the 2024 season. And that was incredibly disheartening. Evan, do you feel that this Cubs offense is going to be better or worse than last season?
I feel like it's going to be better, if only because I think up and down this lineup, it's going to be more consistent. Now, I don't think we're talking about a team that's going to go out there and score double digits all the time, but it does with Dansby Swanson. He's looked a lot better this spring. I mean, we found out last year he was playing kind of with that injury. We got to remember Horner only very recently came back, right? He didn't play in any games until the Cubs were in Japan. And then it was in minor league games. I think Matt Shaw getting going and getting that feel under him. Pete Crow Armstrong being better. Kyle Tucker certainly has to be better in the regular season than what we've seen from him this spring. I think that, like, he alone is probably the biggest factor. I mean, like, we know that he is, right? That's kind of silly to say that. But I think when we look at his offense, you look at, here's a guy who's batting 100 on the spring. If he's batting 300, that actually makes a pretty tremendous difference, I think, in what we see from the Cubs, just in terms of runs and hits and everything else. So if you look up and down the lineup, though, it does feel like they're missing some thunder here and there, but it does kind of feel like there's not a huge separation. Like, there's not that guy, there's not the Nick Madrigal, or somebody who feels like tremendously out of place in the lineup. Like, again, they might need more pop, but I don't see anybody out there who you're like, please God, just find a hole when you bloop this next one. So yeah, I'd love to be proven wrong and have a bunch of guys come up and start just banging the ball over the place. But when Gage Workman leads you in home runs, he's done really well. I don't want to take away from him, but it's just, the games have not been, like you said, they just haven't been exciting. They're not hitting the ball out of the yard. They don't seem to be hitting it hard. They're not stringing a bunch of hits together. So my hope is like, all right, this is one of those things where we get down on them early and then they come out and it's like, all right, yeah, guys, we were just taking it easy. It's spring training. Like, turn it on and fingers crossed, I guess.
Yeah, the other thing of note at the Japan series is that this was also the Dodgers B team, as there was no Mookie Betts and there was no Freddie Freeman. This was, while they did have Ohtani, who, by the way, not a home run that he
not
hit
even
there.
Close.
No, that fan grabbed that ball. That is not a home run.
Did you enjoy how when MLB showed the replays, they only showed him hitting it? Yes. They did not show the result. Like, none of the replays showed where it kind of went out. It's like, clearly everyone watching that's like, that's fan interference. Yes. Like, you knew somebody back. No, that's a homer. We got to
home run.
Ohtani. Come on,
Ohtani home run. Done.
Yeah, that was fun.
But yeah, the Cubs lineup just, I'm concerned that they don't have enough power. When you see a team, the Dodgers obviously the class of MLB, but you think about the other playoff teams, right? If we think the Cubs are gonna be a playoff team, and based on we'll talk about our predictions later in the show and whether we officially think they're a playoff team and what we think the number of wins is going to be. But if they are a playoff team, do they have enough power to compete with these other playoff teams? Because, like you mentioned, where's that pop going to come from?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the real concern, right? Because let's just go right off the top of my head: Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, like every one of those teams immediately, as you know. Again, you mentioned
Mets.
There's Ohtani, yeah, the Mets, right? And then, like, I didn't even think about them, right? But like one dude there in particular, but obviously with Polar Bear there as well. But you look at it. I mean, the Dodgers literally have 3 MVPs in the top 3 spots in their order. The Braves get Acuna Jr. back at some point. I know he's not playing yet, but we saw them against the Cubs. We saw some of that power being evident, but we already know, like, they've got a bunch of dudes back there. The Phillies, we know, because all of them either played for the Cubs or should be playing for the Cubs.
The should have been Cubs. Yeah.
And people got mad at me. What it was like, this is like the bizarro Cubs, because these are all guys who, at least the 3 of them, right? I mean, like, really, like Schwarber and Castellanos were fan favorites already in Chicago, who people wanted them to re-sign. And then Bryce Harper, who Tom Ricketts himself even admitted on the whatever podcast or whatever that it was like, no, you're not allowed to do that, dude, because you're the one who wouldn't let them get him, even though everybody knew that would have made sense. So, so that's the one that keeps biting him in the ass. It's like, this is the bizarro Cubs. Well, but they couldn't, I'm like, I don't know, man, because the Phillies have like 6 or 7 guys with $100 million contracts, and the Cubs have one.
And they got the shortstop that we wanted. When the Cubs signed Dansby Swanson that year, he was the 4th best shortstop of that season, and 6th if you count the 2 that went in the season prior. And Philly's got the shortstop that we wanted too. So Bizarro Cubs is absolutely accurate.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue, and putting Ben Brown in the rotation helps, right? They made that announcement today. I've been calling for that. You got to do this since like early February, right? When camp started to open up. Thankfully they did, but there's my problem is whether or not they've got the power offensively to keep up. I worry that their pitching doesn't have enough firepower to stop those other teams anyway, because when everybody throws 92,
yep,
literally, like it is almost uncanny to have. And what's really fun, like, maybe you've seen this, but based on last year, who is the hardest throwing starter? Not out of Ben Brown. The other 4 starters. Who's the hardest throwing starter the Cubs have? Not named Ben Brown.
Probably Justin Steele.
No. In fact, it is Jameson Taillon at 92.3 last year. So what's really funny is that also Colin Ray threw 92.3. So he would be tied for the hardest thrower in the rotation were he to have made it. And the other name that had been floated, Lance Lynn, despite being long in the tooth, also averaged 92.3 miles an hour on his fastball. So, like, and I think Steele was like 91.9 or 92 flat, and then Shota Imanaga's right. I mean, but these guys like are all within half a mile an hour of each other.
Yeah.
In the year of our Lord 2025, right, when the average starter, like the average fastball is like 94.5.
Yep.
Right, like they just. And I'm not saying they can't compete individually. I know velocity is not everything. I totally understand, right? People are going to shout Greg Maddox's name at me, right? Very different because Greg Maddux did throw really hard when he was young. Like he was throwing harder than that when he was in high school. But I look at that, and when you roll that out there, that they can all be very good. No Cubs pitcher, save for if Brown does what he can do, I really think that potential is there. I think Cade Horton, once he gets up there, has that potential. But Justin Steele, as good as he's been, and Shota Imanaga, as good as he was last year, they don't scare anybody.
No
lineup goes in there, oh, man, we got to face Steele today. I love him. Justin Steele's awesome. But if you're the Dodgers, come on, man. They're just going to laugh at you if that's your top 2 or 3, especially when the Dodgers can also roll out. Like, every dude they've got in that – like, look at the 2 Japanese star pitchers they threw out there who were when Sasaki went out there and his first 5 or 6 pitches were like 101 plus.
crazy. Yeah.
And then he throws
not
a
fair.
splitter. I just like it's two different teams. It's two different games. It looked like in a travel baseball game where you go up, you go out of your hometown, you drive over and you're facing this team, and I've actually seen it, right? Like my son's team last year, 15U, and you go out and you face these dudes, and every one of them was like 6'3", and they drove themselves to the game,
Sure,
and had to shave in the car before the game started, right? Like that's what it felt like when the Cubs played the Dodgers. And you're just like, there's just no. We look at the teams, just look at them on lined up, and be like, nope, that team's better. Like I know that now, and then they prove it. So I would love to be proven wrong again, but I don't see the firepower on either side of the ball.
While Ben Brown in the rotation is a positive for all the things you just listed there, the negative is that I wanted Ben Brown as a potential closer or a bullpen arm for a team that. On paper, I don't know. Do you think that they have a playoff caliber bullpen at this point? I'm not sold on Presley. And now with Ben Brown in the rotation, what do you think about this bullpen?
Yeah, so it again, the spring results are weird, but we did see, in Monday's game against the Braves was a bullpen game, right? Started by Brad Keller. And then it basically went from there, went kind of in reverse order. So you saw Presley, Hodge, Brazier, Merriweather, right? Like, so there's your entire high leverage late inning crew. And, Hodge got kind of shelled in there. So that was a little bit tough. And that was the area that they were supposed to have shored up. So, I mean, there's no such thing as a sure thing in the bullpen, but these are all very experienced, like winning pitchers who have been around World Series, won them. But yeah, I am concerned. I haven't seen a whole lot from Presley that indicates to me that he's going to be able to get the kind of swing and miss that you need from a closer. Like that scares me a lot when you rely on contact in the ninth inning. Don't like that, especially if now it's one thing if the wind is howling in at Wrigley all season long again, like it did last year, different story. But if we see the environmental shift and we do get a few of those June and July evenings and afternoons when wind's blowing out, that's going to be trouble, right? And I'm interested because Keller made the domestic opening day lineup or roster, which is pretty cool. And that's a dude who was averaged in the past. I think he was up to maybe 94 a few years ago, but generally he's been in that kind of 93 range. He touched 98 twice yesterday and has had the velocity up. And I think it's largely because he's mainly been a starter or a swing guy. And I think dudes like that, sometimes you say, hey, just give us one inning, go get 3 outs and let it eat. And so I do wonder if maybe there's a couple guys who will kind of surprise us in that group, take some of the pressure off some of those later dudes. And who knows, maybe Presley's just out there working on something the whole time. And then he'll flip the switch and that'll change once we get to games that matter. But as concerned as I am with it, I still think it's better off than like when they were trying to force Adbert Alzolay into that spot. And then Hector Neris, I feel better about this group than I did, a month or so into last year. And my hope is that Craig Counsell kind of has more trust in them and has more established roles in them so that out of the gate, it's not like, pick a card and hope this guy manages to do it in this spot and just rotate it from there, but that they have more set roles. So I hope, but I'm not super bullish on the group right now.
Well, we've got our predictions. We're going to roll into the back half of this podcast. Evan will provide his predictions. We will be joined by Pat, and we will preview the games ahead. So, Evan, before we let you go, looking ahead to the start of the regular season, as people who listen to this podcast are likely to be listening to it leading into the Diamondbacks home opener on Thursday, the 27th of March. Cubs open with 4 at Arizona, and then off to Sacramento for 3 against Oakland before coming home for the Cubs home opener against San Diego. This opening March/April it's a tough schedule for the Cubs.
Yeah, and you just kind of rattle those off. It's very interesting to me. So the Cubs played the very first game of the season, so technically opening day. Then they have Arizona Diamondbacks home opener, the A's home opener, their own home opener. So their first 4 series are all openers of some sort, which I don't know that that's ever really happened. Somebody else, I kind of stole that from somebody on Twitter somewhere, but yeah, they have a very tough March, April. Their May kind of gets a little bit softer, if you will, but yeah, it's concerning to me if you go out there and kind of, now maybe the other way around flips, and if they can just be kind of, I think 500 through April, I think we need to feel pretty good about that, because then they can bounce back a little bit. But
yeah, especially after you've played the Dodgers 7 times in March and April.
Yeah, and then you don't get to face I forget what. I don't think it's as bad as a couple years ago when they didn't play the Cardinals until July or something crazy like that, right? It's like, what are we doing with this? The one thing I hate about the balanced schedule is that they go to so much effort to make sure you can shoehorn in every single team against every other one. And it's like, the divisional matchups matter to me. I don't like going from 19 to 13 on that or whatever it is. I give me these more traditional games. It's kind of it's hard to kind of really sink your teeth into and really get into the schedule too much. But again, I think as long as they can just kind of tread water for these first few weeks, I think they'll be okay.
Evan, thanks again for joining us. Please remind all of our listeners where they can find your work on the internet and follow you on social media platforms.
Absolutely. So CubsInsider.com, check that out. I'm at @DEvanAltman on X, and I believe it's the same on Blue Sky. And then you can just search, if you do happen to be on Facebook, where we are trying to game the algorithm now that we've seen how they are screwing us over there, but you can search Cubs Insider on Facebook as well, if you so choose to venture into those waters.
And we'll be right back with the second half of the show, predictions, and Pat will be joining us shortly. And now we are joined by my co-host. He's coming to us from high atop Wrigleyville tonight. My cousin Pat is back. Pat, how's it going?
It's going well, Jeremy. Thanks very much.
Better
Jet
late
lag
than
is
never.
Behind me. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Glad you're able to make it here. Evan and I had a fantastic conversation. Wish you were there. But now we're into the business. We're the reason that a lot of people tune in every single year. It is our predictions episode.
Correct.
And as we are, you have the heavy lifting here because you go back and pull the results of how we did last season, which is my favorite part, is how pleasantly surprised we are. So Evan provided his picks as soon as he dropped off. He emailed you the picks. I have not looked at Evan's choices so that I can give my picks without being influenced. And so we will give our predictions, and we will then also read Evan's choices as well. And he'll be listening, so he'll want to hear how he did for his predictions from last year as well. So,
do you want to know what happened on March 27th of 2024 when we did this last time?
I do.
All right. It was a 3-way tie.
A 3-way tie?
Place. Yeah. We're first. Notably, and, we got some of this wrong, obviously.
Yeah.
We got the Morel and Bellinger over home runs wrong. Shocking. We did well on Imanaga on the overs. We did well on the Horner unders for steals. We did well on the unders unfortunately, for Justin Steele because of the injury, I think, in particular. For position player war, Evan was correct. He got, or no, actually, none of us are correct. I take that back. We all got him wrong. Bellinger, Suzuki, and Bellinger. It was so Swanson, which, whatever.
Swanson, brutal. What a brutal year.
Yeah. Pitching player war, you got Imanaga. Steele
Nice.
for Evan and I, so that was failure for us. Over under 84.5 wins. We all had them over. I was the closest to the actual number of 83, which was under. I had 85. Evan had 86, and you had 88.
88, man.
Yeah. Will they win the division? Of course, we all said yes. Answer no. Will they win the NLDS? We all said no. we all got that right. So that's a quick recap, basically.
So we were bullish on a Cubs season that again let us down. I hope that's not a trend as we go into
turning the page, literally on my notebook here. We're turning the page to 2025.
To 2025. All right. Lead off with our first category.
All right. First category. Seiya Suzuki home runs. Over under is 19.5. Last year it was 20.5. So it's gone down. So it's a cheap play if you're up for it. What do you say?
That's an under for me. I always worry about the length of time he spends with an injury throughout the season. That usually happens.
I am bullish on Suzuki this year. I am taking the over, and Evan is a copycat. He is also taking the over, even though he submitted his picks before I announced mine. But small point. Okay, next one for home runs. There's this new dude called Kyle Tucker.
Yes, please.
He is 27.5. What do we say?
I'm going to say the over. I think this is it's a contract year for Kyle Tucker. He is a dude, and he's our best player.
Yeah, if he's a top 10 player, he'll hit more than 27.5 home runs.
Absolutely.
I mean, remember, Anthony Rizzo hit more than that every year, right? So I'm taking the over. Evan's taking the over. The whole world is over. Let's hope it's in the 30s at least.
At least.
Yeah. Ian Happ, 24.5.
He quietly had a lot of home runs last year.
He did.
It's a tough one. I'm going to say
last year he quietly, if you want to call it quietly, but he had 25 home runs last year.
Right, 25. Yeah, you don't think of it. I sure don't. I'll take
add up when you do one a week.
That's. I'll take the under. I don't see
it's under across the board. We're all doing under on that one. That's a sucker's play. I didn't want to say it ahead of time. But,
no, I don't see. I just don't see it for Happ.
Doesn't mean he won't have a good season, but I think it's tough to ask him to repeat that number given the fact that was his career. Was that his career high? I think it might have been his career high in home runs.
Had to be.
So you don't want to. Yeah, that's that. He's never hit more than 25. So I think 24.5. You're asking a lot. So Michael Busch, 23.5.
I'm bullish on Michael Busch.
I think 21 last year, and basically as a rookie.
Yeah, so he's coming off basically a rookie season. He's got Kyle Tucker in this lineup. I'm bullish on a Michael Busch over.
I too am bullish on Busch because if he doesn't hit over, we're in trouble. So I'm taking the over as long as Trey Mancini and Eric Hosmer don't steal his playing time away from him.
I think we're safe.
Yeah, Evan took the under. I will tell you, in looking at this, when you look at the Sportsline books, and I'm not going to mention the various companies that do this because I don't want to promote them in any way, but I did notice that if you took the Tucker and Suzuki home run totals for this year, and you took the Paredes and added those together, and then you added together the Paredes and the Bellinger home run totals, they're even. They're the exact same. So it is predicted that those two guys will have as many home runs as Suzuki and Tucker. So, for what it's worth.
Not much.
Could have hit all four, I guess. But yeah. But I think, Paredes wasn't going to hit those home runs at Wrigley.
Not at all, no.
He'll hit them in that odd Houston stadium. Speaking of which, Cam Smith made the opening day roster.
He did. Yeah, he was part of
132 career minor league at-bats. That seems, it may work out. Sometimes those things do work out, but that seems like a very aggressive move to me.
Yeah, part of the Kyle Tucker trade. Good.
A lot of Cubs fans are freaking out about that, but I still think let's see how he's doing at the end of April before we worry. That's asking.
It doesn't matter. Having Kyle Tucker is better.
Yeah, especially with that contract negotiation that's about to result in a 6-year deal, hopefully, or 10 probably for somebody. Okay, stolen bases. Kyle Tucker. Speaking of which, 19.5.
I'll take the over.
Yeah. I'm going under, as is Evan. I think he'll be too busy trotting around the bases after his home runs to actually want to steal them because they'll be free. So you can't steal something that's free.
Again, I think contract year, he's going big on a lot of stats and categories here.
Pete Armstrong, stolen bases, 31.5. Mind you, last year he was 27 of 30 in not really full-time action necessarily. He had 410 plate appearances.
I will take the under.
Yeah.
Because I worry about Pete Armstrong getting on base to have the opportunity to steal.
I'm taking the under because I'm worried about Pete Armstrong not getting on base, resulting in fewer opportunities to bat.
Exactly.
Now, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he does. Yeah. Or if he could just mature into like a doubles homers guy, I'm not going to complain about that. But 31.5 is a decent number to. I mean, that's asking a lot.
Yeah, and we went in depth last season on what we were seeing, what Matt Trueblood was seeing, and other guests with the swing and the strikeout rates and the concerns around PCA. We went into in depth about that last season, and so until I see something that changes my mind, I'm sticking with the.
It's all a bit interrelated too, because if he starts to see more pitches, if he strikes out less, then he'll bat higher in the order, in which case he'll have more at bats, in which case he probably will steal more bases. So, I mean, they're all, but I think for now, the safe play is probably the under. Nico Horner, 21.5 stolen bases.
What did Evan pick for PCA?
Over.
He took the over as well. Okay.
Yeah. No, he's the only one who took the over.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Horner, 21.5.
I'm gonna go with the under on that one as well. I don't know how I feel about Horner this season.
Okay. Well, he is, probably going to be ready for opening day, but we don't know necessarily how ready. You know how that goes. Evan and I both took the over. 21.5 is a low. No, he had 31 last year. I think he's going to run because I think he, I don't know. I think that's a stat that he wants to build up. We'll see. Last year was not, his OPS plus is like 101. So he's basically an average hitter. His batting average was 273, but his on-base percentage was low because he just didn't walk that much. He had 641 plate appearances. I don't know if he'll repeat those plate appearances. So if he is, but then again, he only needs 22 steals, not the 31 he had last year. But so, yeah, I mean, we'll see how that plays out. And
it sounds about right. It's going to be close. Yeah, it could be close either way.
I do think that PCA will probably lead the team in steals. So if I had to take a guess. So, all right, moving on to the pitching. Imanaga wins 10.5. Wins are one of those categories that are difficult to predict for a number of reasons. He had 15 last year for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think I'll take the over again on that one because I think the Cubs will have the opportunity in this division to have more wins than they had last year as a whole, as a team, and there's a good chance Imanaga is still one of the best pitchers in this rotation.
Justin Steele, 14.5.
What did you and Evan choose for the Imanaga?
Over.
Both overs? Okay, so we're all over? Okay.
That's a no-brainer.
Good.
Yeah.
Justin Steele, what was the number?
14.5.
I'm going to go under on the 14.5.
We're all going under. And part of that might be because he had 5 wins last year. Isn't that crazy? A 3.07 ERA in 134 innings. He started 24 games and he had 5 wins. He was just snake bit. Meanwhile, Imanaga had a similar ERA, 2.91, pitched a few more games, 29, and had 15 wins. I mean, wins is such an arbitrary category. So, to say somebody's going to have 15 wins is a lot. To say they're going to have 11 seems a lot easier. But for all we know, Imanaga could have pitched almost as well as this year and somehow end up with like 10 wins and be under. And Steele could. I mean, he did 2 years ago, win a ton of games. So, but I think you just got to go with the odds on something like this, and the odds indicate that 14.5 might be the under. Yeah, not a lot of pitchers win 15 games anymore.
Yeah.
Remember when 20 wins was like the mark? I mean, that's a long time ago, but there were years when, like in the 70s and 80s, when you'd have like 15, 18 pitchers with 20 wins. 4 on a team sometimes. The Braves,
Sure.
the Orioles in the 60s, the Braves in the 90s, but that's not the case. All right. Strikeouts, Imanaga, 160.5.
I'm gonna stick with the over again. Still bullish on Imanaga. I don't think people have figured him out. He'll still get the significant strikeouts. That splitter's still devastating.
He had 174 last year. Evan chose the over too. I'm going to go the under because if he misses a couple starts with an injury, that's one of those stats where that can slip, right? The Ks. But it wouldn't surprise me, and I do hope he does hit the over. That's a good sign. Steele also 160.5.
I'll take the over on that. I think we'll see a good. I think we'll have a really solid Justin Steele season.
I also am going to take the over, whereas Evan is going to take the under on that. So, point of contention. Ryan Presley, the closer, potentially. 23.5 saves, over under.
Evan and I talked about the concerns around this bullpen. If it was a playoff caliber bullpen, we discussed that, and Presley is a key part of it. I'm not totally sold. This was a rough spring for him, and I'm not totally sold. And I'm going to take the under because I don't know if there'll be a committee, if he's going to be in and out of that role at some point. I just don't. I'm not sold on Presley yet. I'm hoping he flips a switch when the season starts and blows us away. But what I've seen so far, I can't believe that it's higher.
Evan is taking the over. I have decided that I will never take the over on this category after the last 5 years of playing this game. I'm taking the under as well. Last year, the save total for the save leader was also 23.5. That would have been Albert Alzolay, who you and I both said would be over. And the result on that one was 4 saves. Oof. So, yeah. But, we laugh or we cringe, but that's been the case pretty much every year. The closer, until you have an established closer, as we know when you're using young people and old people like this, like the Cubs have, you do run into these issues. And Presley's a little bit on the older side. So who will lead the team in saves? Will it be Presley or not?
I'm gonna say not. I'm not. I mean, I hope I look like a fool because he's just dominating. But I just don't know about Presley. I was still, while Ben Brown is in the rotation, we were, I was still holding out hope that he would get an opportunity in this role.
Well, after the Dylan Cease trade, he will.
So, it's still a possibility that that he makes it into the bullpen at some point, and I think that I just don't think that Presley will lead the team in saves. No.
Well, I am going to be the optimist in the room, and I'm going to say no, he will not lead the team in saves, but only because Porter Hodge will emerge as Cubs closer.
I like that.
He had 9 last year, second only to Hector Neris' 17. Boy, that was a hard 17, wasn't it, for Hector? But
Heart attack Hector is what it was called. Yeah.
When your WHIP is 1.523, it makes for some white knuckle ninth innings. All right, position player WAR. Who will be the Cubs leader in position player WAR?
Last season, Dansby Swanson.
Yes.
This season, easy Kyle Tucker by a mile.
I am going to say Occam's razor. It better be Kyle Tucker.
Not even close. Trouble. It won't even be close.
Hey, look, Dansby Swanson could have a better offensive year than last year, and with his great defense, he could still have a solid WAR. But I really do hope that Kyle Tucker kind of runs away with this one. Swanson's WAR last year was 3.9. Seiya Suzuki was 3.5. I'd like to see Kyle Tucker over 5.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if Swanson wants to be at 4.3 or whatever, that's cool too. But let's make Tucker the leader. Evan sadly has PCA. Did he not understand the question? I'm not sure, but I guess defense does play a role in that. And in fairness, PCA did have 2.3 WAR last year, even with that OPS of 670. So I mean, anything's possible. But a lot would have to go right. Shortstops seem to really benefit more from defensive WAR than center fielders, but we'll see. Pitcher player WAR. PPW.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Imanaga like I did last year. I think that he's our guy, unless there's a pitcher that is not on the team yet that will join the team at some point past the trade deadline. But going as the team stands constructed now, it's got to be Imanaga.
So the choices I think are Imanaga, obviously, or Steele. I too am going to go Imanaga. Evan is he's bullish on the kids. He took Brown.
Yeah, that's.
I don't see Brown starting an entire season as a starting pitcher, and in the bullpen, you're not going to get that. You're not going to lead the team in WAR. So, is Evan? He seems
Evan's
pretty
very excited. Yes, he's very excited for the difference, the actual power that Ben Brown brings to the rotation that the Cubs don't currently have today.
If that happened, right?
Absolutely.
But seeing as how he's only got 58 career innings as pitched, over 2 seasons with the Cubs, and then in the minors, I don't know. I'm not going to bank on that. But if it comes true, good pull for him, for Evan, and for Brown.
You heard it here first. You heard it here in the first half of the show.
Yes.
How bullish Evan is on Ben Brown in this rotation. So we will replay that audio as when we recap next year's prediction results if he's right.
Team wins over under is 86.5. This is I made this up before Tokyo too. Still 86.5.
I'm going to say over, but not by much.
Yeah.
That's an 87, 88.
I'm thinking 87.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you down for 88. Yeah, I think it's going to be tight, but I think they get it. Remember those teams like the 03 team that almost went to the World Series, and the 04 team was actually better than the 03 team but didn't make the playoffs? They were like around 86, 87 wins, right? I mean, they weren't, that's – you can have a successful season and win 87 games in the sense that like it can feel successful.
Yeah.
Depending on how everybody else is doing in the league. And really at this point, 87 wins for the Cubs, considering they already have 2 losses, they'd basically be playing 14 games over 500 the rest of the way. That's,
For me, a lot of it depends on how annoying Pittsburgh is this year. How many wins do they take off of your total? Like
right. They're going to finish in last place in the division probably, unless the Cardinals, funk out. But that doesn't mean they're not going to beat the Cubs 5 or 6 times.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, how many times we saw Paul Skeens like 4 times last year, and
I know.
It was just brutal.
Okay. Playoffs. Yes or no?
Yes.
Of course. Yeah, if we win 88 games or 87 games, we should win the division.
You win the division, absolutely. It's a 2-team race for the division. It is Milwaukee and Chicago, and that's it.
That's right. I mean, the only wild card on that, and I don't think this is really a team in contention, but I'll just say it to say it, is that I could see a scenario where, hypothetically, the young players on the Reds kind of take another step up, and some of those pitchers also take a step up, and they somehow catch lightning and maybe even add a player at the trading deadline and win the division. But that is an unlikely scenario, but I think it's the only other possibly realistic one. Like, I don't think the Cardinals under any scenario are going to win the division.
No.
And the Pirates, who was their premier free agent acquisition this offseason, like Tommy Pham or somebody? I mean, no, that's not happening either. Okay. So we have them making the playoffs. We also have winning the division, I take it, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Because you could make the playoffs and lose the division, but I don't think in the Central that's how it's going to play out this year.
No, there will be no wild cards coming out of the Central this year.
We don't need it. NLDS.
Did Evan also?
Oh, yeah, he's a yes.
Good.
Do we win the NLDS and make it to the National League Championship Series?
We do not.
Yeah,
we
I already
lose
put
in
no for you, by the way.
spectacular fashion.
Sorry, I filled that in before he spoke.
Yes.
Yes, no, that's a tall task. Catch me at the All-Star break. Maybe things will change, and maybe the Cubs will add at the at the trade deadline. Like the Cubs actually had the capacity and hopefully the money to do that. So, adding a Dylan Cease or adding somebody of value could, make a difference. But no, not as things currently are situated. I think. Okay. Attendance. Over or under 3 million? The last time they were over 3 million in attendance was 2019. And by the way, they did it quite a few years in a row in the 21st century after never doing it before then. But then COVID hit in 2020, and they've never really kind of caught their footing since then.
Yeah, because they stopped putting a
the record probably,
competitive product on the field.
That has hurt a little bit.
For some reason, season tickets are sold out,
according
to the Cubs. Now, if I called the ticket rep, would they tell me you're getting on the season ticket list, or are they going to tell me, hey,
something just came available?
Something just came available. Perfect timing. Like I don't know, but let's say that the propaganda is true and that they actually have sold out of season tickets. If that's the case, 3 million's easy. Like that's an easy 3 million. Over.
Yeah, I'm taking the over. Evan took the under. I also think that if the Cubs get hot, and I know April's going to be a really challenging month. You might have talked with Evan about how brutal the schedule is.
Brutal
but
schedule.
You know what? April's not a high attendance month anyway in baseball, especially in the North when you're not in a dome stadium. So I don't think that will affect them as much. But I think if they get hot after that, when the weather warms up, if that coincides with a win streak, I think the city of Chicago is very thirsty for a good. Yeah, sorry about that. Very, very, very disturbing. It appears that the Pittsburgh Pirates front office has hacked into my computer and tried to silence me for that Tommy Pham reference. I don't know. I don't even know if they signed Tommy Pham. It could have been Xavier Nady for all I know. But whomever it was known of real import. Yeah. So I was talking about the attendance.
Yeah, you said if they heat up.
Yeah.
The city of Chicago is thirsty.
Yes.
And then you dropped out. So pick it up from there.
Thirsty for a winner. As we've seen from the Bulls winning 8 out of 10, people get excited about the craziest things. And we have needed a winner for quite some time here. And it's been a real dark stretch. So with that in mind, I think the Cubs do hit the 3 million. I think they packed the place all summer long. I think there's a lot of Kyle Tucker enthusiasm. I think the team has a good combination of young players who are exciting, right? Like PCA is an exciting player to watch. And I think Matt Shaw will be exciting for people, and Ben Brown and people like that. And who knows who might come up later in the year. They've got a lot of other young players on the horizon. Maybe a Cade Horton comes up at some point. Who knows? And then you combine that with the Suzukis and the Haps and the Bushes and the Horners and the Tuckers. And I think, you've got Imanaga, Steele. I mean, there are a lot of people that fans track on and will be excited to come see play. And there's going to be playoff baseball in Chicago come October. It's so exciting.
I'm in. Is Evan also on the over? Did we all go over on that one?
No, he went under.
He went under. Okay.
But he wasn't here to hear my impassioned plea, so I can't hold it against him.
Sure.
All right. So those are the questions for the 2016 season or 2025 season. Sorry. 2016. I wish. Who knows? Maybe it will be a prelude to 2016. If you answered these at home in similar fashion, great. If you are more pessimistic, it's going to be a long year for you. If you are more optimistic, I hope you're right.
Always fun to go through our predictions, to hear how we did from the previous year and look ahead to the optimism is high. We are very excited for Kyle Tucker, for the Cubs. This looks great. And we have one more segment before we close out the show. And this is what we do every week now this season. Our guests choose a player for us to profile from some former Cub, whoever they choose. We will go ahead and do a little profile piece on those Cubs. So far, we've done Moises Alou, which was super fun. Really enjoyed that last week. If you didn't hear that, you can go back to the archives, last week's episode, and listen to the history of Moises Alou. This week, I was very excited. One of my all-time favorite Cubs was chosen. A guy who I can't wait to talk about right now, Derrek Lee.
D. Lee, one of the great class acts in Chicago baseball history. Also a contemporary of Moises Alou. He was coming when Alou was going, but they crossed paths for a couple of years, or at least 1 year. So Derrek Lee, much like Moises Alou, you know what they have in common? I did not realize this until just 2 weeks ago. But apparently, both of them have not just a dad, but also at least one uncle. Moises had two, who have some baseball fame of their own. In this case, I did not realize, I don't know, the entire time Derrek Lee was a Cub, I never knew this, so I'm embarrassed. But I don't know if, it seems like a story someone would have told, but I don't know if they did. Did you know that his father and his uncle both played professional baseball in Japan for like 10 and 11 years, respectively? In the late 70s and early 80s?
No, it might have been mentioned, but not talked about.
Derrek Lee went to grade school in Japan and then would visit in the summertime in high school. That blew my mind. So I just learned about that when the Cubs were in Japan. So, yeah, so there's the Japan connection and the famous father and uncle connection these two players have. We are going to run out of famous uncle-father combinations. So
yeah, we are.
Yeah. I don't know what to look for next, but okay, so Derrek Lee, drafted in 1993, not surprisingly, the 14th pick in the first round by San Diego. The only reason they were able to get him is because the Cubs scooped up a player with the 10th pick by the name of Brooks Kieschnick. D. Lee need not apply for the Cubs in 1993. It was too soon. We all knew it was too soon. We needed him later. So he goes to the Padres. He works in the minors for a couple of years, comes up in 1997. After the 97 season, he is traded to, of all teams, the Florida Marlins, because the Marlins were building up for one of their playoff runs. You know how they, as we saw with Moises Alou, they like to bring in a lot of stars and then get rid of them all when they decide that you can no longer afford it. In this case, they were in the Marlins were actually leaving being good because they'd won, I think it was 97, right, when they won the World Series against the they beat the Braves in they beat the Braves in that crazy NLCS game with when the umpire called everything a strike on every batter that came up. And there were like 16 strikeouts, and still one of the worst officiated umpired games of all time. Anyway, so Marlins, fresh off a World Series, do what they do, and they trade their good players. So they traded Kevin Brown, the pitcher, who's very good, to the Padres and get prospects in return. The prospect in this case was Derrek Lee. They also traded Moises Alou at the time, I believe, to Houston, right? That was part of that transitional period. Kevin Brown goes on to take the Padres to the World Series, where they're unceremoniously stomped by the New York Yankees. I was in San Diego during the World Series for a wedding. Tickets to the game were $30 when they were down 3-0. Decent seats. Yeah. Anyway, so he goes to Florida. He plays quite well. Sadly, a little too well. He got one of the big hits against Mark Pryor in the 8th inning of Game 6 of the 2003 NLCS. And I thought, I wish he was on our team, but he wasn't. If he had been, we probably would have gone to the World Series because we would have won more games and a lot of other things would have happened, but it didn't. However, don't worry, because the following year, the Cubs around Thanksgiving make a trade, and they trade Hee-Seop Choi, who was their part-time first baseman who platooned with Eric Karros, you may recall.
That is correct.
Previous year. Hee-Seop Choi, I think, was the guy who who Kerry Wood ran into on a pop-up against the Yankees, like in that big June series, and knocked cold. I don't know if he was out for a while after that. Anyway, so and then they brought in Eric Karros with the 3-run pinch home run off of Clemens, I think, or something. I vaguely remember that, but it was a great game. Anyway, getting back to Derrek Lee. So the Cubs get Derrek Lee. A lot of people were upset about this.
I was just about to say, outrageously, people were upset about trading Aesop Choi.
I can't remember if I said this on air or off air last week when we were talking with our guest about this, but for the one and only time I've ever called into the Score was the night they announced that trade. Peggy Kozlowski or whatever was the host that night. It was like the Thanksgiving weekend, nighttime host, right? And people were calling in to say, "Oh, it's a terrible trade, and Aesop Choi is going to be great. What are they doing?" And I called and I said, "Look, this is ridiculous. Derrek Lee had a better OPS than any Cub in 2003, the year before, including Sammy Sosa, right? He was great. His OPS was 872. I'm like, the guy draws walks. He hits well. He's got a good glove. He's a first baseman. This is a big market team move, right?" And I was right. What I did not realize at the time, and I just learned this the other day, did you know that Aesop Choi was discovered by a scout who was also Derrek Lee's father?
What? No,
he became a scout after his in Asia after his career as a Japanese in Japanese baseball, and he became a scout in Asia, and he found Aesop Choi and brought it to the attention of the Cubs, and here we go. So anyway, there you go. That's the Derrek Lee connection. I think he did that because he's like, okay, then they can trade this guy for my son. It worked out great if that was the plan. Derrek Lee was on the Cubs from 2004 to 2010, and the 2005 season. Can we just pause on that one?
What a year.
One of the great seasons by any Cub. Now, he finished third in the MVP voting, which seems shocking because I'm going to read off some stats. So his WAR that year was 7.7.
Man.
That's like the top 3 Cubs of last year position players combined. He scored 120 runs. Not bad for first baseman. Led the league with 199 hits. 50 doubles, also led the league. Hit 46 homers on top of that, had 107 RBIs, stole 15 out of 18 bases, led the league with a batting average of 335, a slugging percentage of 662, an OPS of 1.080. That's Pujols in his prime numbers. A OPS plus of 174. And basically total bases, 393. I mean, he led the league in all of these categories. He finished third behind Pujols and Andruw Jones. Only Pujols had a higher WAR among hitters. And that was one of those Pujols years where, he did his nonsense where he hits 330 and walks a lot and it's 40 homers and drives a ton of runs, but whatever. Point is, Derrek Lee was at Albert Pujols in his peak level that year. And that was a lot of fun to see on a team that otherwise was kind of disappointing.
Defensively, he was also great.
Very great. 3 Gold Gloves.
3 Gold Gloves. And he was catching throws from Aramis Ramirez.
Yes.
And making it look easy. Like, we took it for granted. Like, these were not all easy plays for Derrek Lee.
Here's a fun fact. While Pujols won the MVP over him, Derrek Lee actually won the Silver Slugger for first base. Pujols just happened to be on a good team. So I think that's what put him over the top. If Derrek Lee had been on a playoff division-winning team, he probably would have won the MVP with those numbers. In fact, those numbers would win the MVP most years, right? I mean, those are fantastic. Sadly, in 2006, early in the season, he's doing it all, as he always does. And he was viciously attacked and mugged by Rafael Furcal of the Atlanta Braves on the base paths and smashed into him and broke his wrist, which sucked. He only had 204 plate appearances that year. And, it was basically a lost season, really. And even the next year, while he had a good season in 07 and really 08 too, was an all-star. Was hitting 300, putting up great OPSs or whatever, 913, 823. It felt like his power was sapped a little bit because he was still getting the 40 plus doubles, but he was only hitting like 20, 22 home runs. That burst of home runs that he had a couple years before was there. And I don't know if it was lingering issues with the wrist or if it's just bad luck or whatever, but he had a couple of years where he had great seasons, but was not quite at the same level he had been. And then in 2009, he comes back, and that's the year where he does the whole 972 OPS with a 306 average and a 579 slugging percentage, 35 homers and 36 doubles and 111
Welcome
RBIs.
Back. Welcome
back, right? And so that was great. He was 32. And so, the frustrating part was the 07-08 period was when I wish he had been at his absolute peak because, Aramis was,
Yep.
The Cubs they were playoff teams, getting swept a lot, but still playoff teams. And it would have been nice had he been his previous self or his post self, right? It's just typical Cubs bad luck. It's sort of like Moises Alou at his best Cubs season, in after they, in 04, not in 03. Yeah. So timing is everything. Okay. So then he is traded in 2010 because the Cubs are kind of, in a rebuild in the middle of the season, goes to the Braves. And then the following year, he finishes up with Baltimore and then ends up with Pittsburgh in a trade. Has an OPS on base plus slugging percentage, by the way, of 982 with the Pirates. He really did well when he got there. But for the season, he had a solid season. In fact, he had an OPS plus 100 is considered average. So he was over 100 every year from 2000 to 2011, including his final year in 2011 at age 35. And then he never played again. Feels like he could have caught on with somebody, right? It wasn't like he was bad that year, but he had a great season and finished a very illustrious career with, of which I think he would acknowledge that his Cubs time was probably his favorite time of all those teams, and I can't blame him, right? Who would think otherwise? And by the way, don't blame him for the Cubs playoff failures in 07 and 08. He hit 333 in 07 and he hit 545 in 2008. Despite the fact they got swept, he did have an OPS of 1.4. So, when you come to the plate 11 times, you go 6 for 11 with 3 doubles and you walk once, you're doing what you can do. Right?
Can't ask for much more.
No. So that is Derrek Lee, who will hopefully be inducted in the Cubs Hall of Fame this season. Is that our thought?
Him and Sosa are going in at the same time.
I thought Sosa went in last year with Ramirez.
No, it was Kerry Wood. Kerry Wood
and Ramirez. Mm-hmm. I feel like Ramirez and Lee should go in together because they're sort of like this 1-2 punch. They batted together in the lineup, the first and third baseman. Really, when you think of first,
it's because the Sosa thing.
Yeah,
the Sosa thing had to have been a last minute agreement because if you were planning this out, you would have done Lee and Ramirez
7 years ago, and you would have done this now. It
would have been a Lee and Ramirez together.
Yeah, Derrek Lee, one of the all-time greats. I felt bad for Carlos Pena, who was the Cubs' first baseman who replaced him because it just wasn't quite the same. And Pena was fine and whatnot, but it just wasn't Derrek Lee, and Lee was Lee. And I always remember those are some fun years to come to Wrigley Field. Cubs did pretty well in that 07-08 stretch, despite, and Pinello would tell you this. I mean, despite their playoff collapses, those are fun years before that.
So much fun.
A lot of fun. I really hope the Cubs can kind of get back to that this year. If they could replicate that, that'd be a lot of fun. So anyway, so that is the Derrek Lee story.
Excellent. And Evan will provide us with his choice. We will be back next week with Evan's choice for the Cub to profile next week.
Better than Sophie's choice, I suppose. But yeah.
And don't forget that if we don't have a guest, then we will turn to our patrons over at patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation. They will make the choice of who we will profile. And they are the reason.
They could pick like Bill Buckner if they wanted to.
They absolutely could.
That would be like a special episode, though, right? Like it would take the entire episode.
You want to dedicate a special episode for that one? Yeah. And so a thank you to all the patrons over the Patreon. That's the reason that we are ad free for yet another season here, because they are supporting the show, helping us keep the lights on and not have to run ads for another season. And so they will get to choose in future weeks to come. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna call it a podcast. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. We are getting back to the every week cadence.
Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to everyone else. Yes, I know you're good. I know you're good. We've got every week cadence coming up, so make sure that you stay subscribed. We could also use your help getting subscriptions over at our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com, search for Wrigleyville Nation Podcast. There, the video version of the podcast can be found. So if you go give us a like, subscribe, all that stuff over there. Subscribing helps us work the algorithm so other Cub fans can find the show. And even if you don't consume your podcast via the visual medium, just throwing that subscribe there will help us out and continue to stay subscribed on your normal audio podcatcher of choice. You can also see the video version of this podcast on Spotify as well. So the audio and video versions are also available on Spotify for this season as well. And social media channels are all available at Wrigleyville Nat. That's the best way to interact with the show. Twitter, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, anywhere where socials are, we can be found at Wrigleyville Nat. And of course, WrigleyvilleNation.com has all the links, the entire back catalog of this podcast, all the ways to support the show. Everything is available at WrigleyvilleNation.com. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and get ready for regular season baseball. Pat, are you excited?
Very excited.
Me too. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.